The massive Ferengi invasion fleet entered Earth's solar system without warning. Alarms blared across every military installation on the planet. Admiral Patrick Cook, commander of Earth's Defense Force, strode into the bustling command center, his jaw clenched as he surveyed the holographic display of the approaching alien armada. "Report," he barked, eyes fixed on the swarm of red dots representing the Ferengi ships. A young lieutenant snapped to attention. "Sir, we're detecting over 500 vessels of various classes. They've just passed Saturn's orbit and are accelerating towards Earth." Cook nodded grimly. He'd trained for this scenario, but the reality of an alien invasion was far more terrifying than any simulation. As he opened his mouth to issue orders, a priority message flashed across the main screen. "Admiral, the Ferengi are broadcasting on all frequencies," a communications officer announced. On screen, Cook commanded. The alien face that appeared was vaguely humanoid, with large, pointed ears and sharp teeth bared in what might have been a smile or a snarl. "I am Talon, lead tactician of the Ferengi fleet. We demand Earth's immediate and unconditional surrender. Resist, and we will reduce your cities to ash." Cook cut the transmission, his mind racing. "Get me a secure line to the UN Security Council, now." Within minutes, he was addressing the world's leaders, their faces grim on the view screen before him. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing an unprecedented threat. Our initial intelligence suggests the Ferengi possess technology far beyond our own. We need to decide on a course of action immediately." The Russian president spoke first. "What are our options, Admiral?" Cook took a deep breath. "We can attempt to fight, but given the technological disparity, our chances are slim. We could surrender and hope for mercy, or—" He paused, weighing his next words carefully. "We could try to negotiate." The room fell silent. Finally, the U.S. president spoke. "Negotiate? With an invasion force?" Cook nodded. "I propose leading a small delegation to meet with the Ferengi commander. It's a risk, but it might buy us time to activate our more experimental defenses." After heated debate, the world leaders reluctantly agreed. They had no better alternatives. Cook assembled his team quickly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, Major Li Wei, tactical expert, and Professor Adebayo Okafor, linguistic specialist. They boarded the EDF Horizon, Earth's most advanced spacecraft, equipped with prototype shields and weapon systems. As the Horizon approached the Ferengi fleet, Cook transmitted a message. "This is Admiral Patrick Cook of Earth's Defense Force. You are ordered to leave our solar system immediately. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences." The response was almost instantaneous. Talon's face appeared on the view screen, his expression one of amused contempt. "Bold words from a primitive species. Dock with our flagship if you wish to discuss the terms of your planet's surrender." Cook exchanged glances with his team. This was it. As the Horizon maneuvered towards the enormous Ferengi vessel, he couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of humanity rested on what happened in the next few hours. The docking procedure was tense but uneventful. As Cook and his team stepped onto the Ferengi ship, they were immediately surrounded by armed guards. The aliens were shorter than humans but heavily muscled, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an oily sheen. They were escorted to the bridge, a cavernous room filled with technology that made Earth's most advanced systems look like children's toys. Talon sat on a raised platform, looking down at the human delegation with undisguised disdain. "Welcome aboard, Admiral," Talon said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I trust you're here to offer your planet's surrender?" Cook stood tall, meeting the alien's gaze. "On the contrary, I'm here to give you one last chance to leave our system peacefully." Talon's laughter echoed through the bridge. "Or what? You'll destroy us with your primitive weapons?" "We have capabilities you can't begin to understand," Cook bluffed, praying his poker face held. "Leave now, or face the consequences." Talon's amusement vanished, replaced by cold anger. "Enough games. We're here to strip your world of resources and enslave your population. Your species is nothing more than livestock to us." Cook's heart sank. Diplomacy had failed. He caught Major Lee's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Whatever happened next, they wouldn't go down without a fight. "This is your final warning," Cook said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "Leave Earth or face destruction." Talon rose from his seat, towering over Cook. "Your pathetic threats mean nothing. Prepare to witness the end of your civilization." As tension filled the air, Cook's mind raced. He had to find a way to neutralize the Ferengi threat, to save Earth against impossible odds. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and time was running out. Cook's hand moved subtly to his chest, pressing a hidden button on his uniform. In an instant, the bridge of the Ferengi flagship plunged into darkness. The sudden loss of power caught Talon and his crew off guard, their shouts of confusion echoing through the cavernous room. "Now," Cook barked, springing into action. The human team moved with practiced precision. Major Lee Wei struck first, her fist connecting with the nearest guard's jaw. The alien crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering across the floor. Professor Okafor scooped it up, his linguistic expertise allowing him to quickly decipher the alien technology. "This way," Dr. Rodriguez called out, her keen eye for xenobiology helping her navigate the unfamiliar ship layout. The team fought their way through the corridors, stunning or subduing any Ferengi who crossed their path. As they battled towards the engineering section, the ship's emergency systems began to flicker back to life. "We don't have much time," Cook panted, ducking under a wild swing from a Ferengi engineer. They burst into the engine room, a vast chamber humming with energy. In the center, suspended in a crackling field of blue light, floated a device unlike anything they had ever seen. It pulsed with an otherworldly glow, tendrils of energy snaking out to connect with the ship's systems. "That must be the source of their power," Dr. Rodriguez breathed, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. Cook didn't hesitate. "Take it out," he ordered. Major Lee fired her captured weapon at the device. The energy beam struck the artifact, causing it to wobble in its containment field. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the artifact's glow intensified. "Again," Cook shouted. This time, the combined fire from the entire team overloaded the containment field. The artifact exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves through the ship. The deck lurched beneath their feet as systems failed across the vessel. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Takahashi's fingers flew across her keyboard, ancient symbols scrolling across her screen. Her eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. "This can't be," she murmured, double-checking her translations. She grabbed her communicator. "Defense Force Command, this is Dr. Takahashi. I found something you need to see immediately." Within minutes, she was presenting her findings to a panel of stunned military officials. "These texts speak of an advanced civilization that once inhabited our solar system. They left behind a network of defensive weapons, hidden throughout the system. If we can activate them, we might have a chance against the Ferengi." General Zhang leaned forward, his expression grave. "Where do we start looking?" Takahashi pointed to a map of the solar system. "The moon. There's a system hidden beneath the lunar surface." As Earth mobilized its resources to locate the ancient defenses, chaos erupted aboard the Ferengi flagship. Cook and his team fought their way back towards the bridge, using the ship's confusion to their advantage. They burst onto the command deck, catching Talon and his officers by surprise. The Ferengi leader snarled, drawing a wicked-looking blade from his belt. "You'll pay for this, human." Cook ducked under Talon's wild swing, years of hand-to-hand combat training kicking in. He swept the alien's legs out from under him, sending Talon crashing to the deck. The two grappled fiercely, rolling across the bridge as the battle raged around them. Major Lee and Professor Okafor held off the other Ferengi, their Earth combat training proving superior to the aliens' reliance on technology. Dr. Rodriguez, meanwhile, worked furiously at a control panel, trying to access the ship's communications. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Cook pinned Talon to the ground. The Ferengi leader glared up at him, hatred burning in his eyes. "It doesn't matter," Talon spat. "My fleet will reduce your world to ashes." Cook's response was cut short by Dr. Rodriguez's shout, "Admiral, I've got control of the comms." "Broadcast on all frequencies," Cook ordered, keeping Talon pinned beneath him. He took a deep breath and addressed the Ferengi fleet. "This is Admiral Patrick Cook of Earth. Your leader has been captured, and your flagship is under our control. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." The response was immediate. Some Ferengi ships began to waver, their formations breaking apart. Others, however, pressed on with their attack, perhaps believing Cook's message to be a desperate bluff. On Earth, the situation was growing dire. The planet's orbital defenses buckled under the Ferengi assault. Despite the invaders' loss of their technological edge, explosions lit up the night sky as satellites and space stations fell. In a secret facility beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Takahashi and a team of engineers worked feverishly to activate the ancient defense system. Sweat beaded on her brow as she inputted a complex sequence of commands, praying that her translations were accurate. "Energy buildup detected," one of the engineers called out. "It's working." A low hum filled the air, growing in intensity until the very rock beneath their feet began to vibrate. On the lunar surface, a massive array of previously hidden structures emerged from the regolith, aligning themselves towards Earth's orbit. In space, the Ferengi attack faltered as a blinding beam of energy erupted from the moon's surface. It sliced through the void, cutting a swath of destruction through the alien fleet. Ships exploded or broke apart, their advanced shields useless against the power of the precursor weapon. Aboard the captured flagship, Cook watched the display with a mixture of awe and relief. The Ferengi fleet was in disarray, caught between the ancient weapon and their own uncertainty. But the battle was not nearly finished. Many Ferengi ships continued to fight, driven by desperation or bloodlust. Cook realized he needed to act quickly to end this conflict before more lives were lost on both sides. He turned to his team, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, but filled with perseverance. "We need to find a way to shut this down for good," he said, gesturing to the chaos unfolding on the interfaces. "Any ideas?" As they huddled together, formulating a plan that could decide the fate of two species, the battle for Earth raged on in the space around them. As the battle raged on around them, Admiral Cook's mind raced. He knew they needed a game-changing move to turn the tide of this conflict. His eyes swept across the alien bridge, taking in the advanced technology surrounding them. Suddenly, an idea struck. "Dr. Rodriguez," he called out, "can you access the ship's communications array?" The xenobiologist nodded, her fingers already flying over the alien controls. "I think so, Admiral. What do you have in mind?" "We need to send a message to Earth," Cook replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It's time the world knows what we're up against." As Rodriguez worked to establish a connection, Cook turned to Professor Okafor. "I need you to help me craft this message. We have to make it clear, concise, and impossible to ignore." Within minutes, they had a planet-wide broadcast ready. Cook took a deep breath, stepped in front of the alien camera, and began to speak. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Patrick Cook. I'm broadcasting from aboard the enemy flagship. The threat we face is real and dire. These aliens, known as the Ferengi, intend to strip our world of resources and enslave our population, but we are not defenseless." Cook went on to explain the discovery of the precursor defense systems, careful not to reveal too much tactical information. "Humanity stands united against this threat. Together, we will prevail." As Cook's message spread across the globe, its effect was immediate and profound. Panic gave way to persistence as people worldwide rallied to support the defense effort. Political differences were set aside, and a wave of global cooperation swept across the planet. Meanwhile, beneath the scorching sands of the Sahara Desert, Dr. Elena Takahashi and her team worked tirelessly. They had discovered a vast underground complex, its alien architecture unlike anything they had ever seen. The air was thick with dust and the hum of ancient machinery slowly coming to life. "This is incredible," Takahashi breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the array of advanced weaponry before them. If we can activate these systems, we might actually have a chance. But as they delved deeper into the complex systems, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. Dr. Takahashi frowned at the readouts on her tablet. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "What is it?" asked one of her colleagues, peering over her shoulder. "The system is asking for some kind of genetic key," Takahashi explained, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like it's searching for a specific DNA sequence." As the implications of this discovery sank in, Takahashi's eyes widened. "Of course," she whispered. "The precursors, they must have encoded their technology to respond to their own genetic markers." She turned to her team, her voice urgent. "We need to run a comparison with human DNA samples. If the precursors were our ancestors, or at least related to us, there might be a match." As Takahashi's team raced to unlock the secrets of the Sahara complex, Admiral Cook was putting his own plan into action aboard the Ferengi flagship. With Dr. Rodriguez's help, he managed to gain control of the ship's advanced jamming technology. "Activate it," Cook ordered. "Let's see how well they fight when they can't communicate." The effect was immediate. The Ferengi fleet, already in disarray from the Lunar Defense System's attack, fell into further chaos. Ships veered off course, colliding with one another or firing at shadows. Cook didn't stop there. He turned to Major Li Wei, who had taken control of the flagship's weapon systems. "Major, target the largest remaining Ferengi vessels. It's time to give them a taste of their own medicine." Li nodded grimly, her fingers dancing across the alien controls. The flagship's weapons roared to life, lancing out with terrifying precision. Ferengi ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their debris adding to the dangerous field of wreckage surrounding Earth. The sudden assault from their own flagship proved to be the breaking point for many Ferengi captains. Confusion turned to panic, and then to a desperate bid for survival. Ship turned against ship as the invading fleet began to tear itself apart. On the ground, Colonel Marcus Wells stood atop a hastily constructed command post, surveying the chaos in the skies above. The experimental energy shields shimmered around major cities, their pale blue glow a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. "Status report," Wells barked into his comm unit. "Shields are holding at 87% capacity, sir," came the response. "We've repelled 3 attempted landings in the last hour." Wells nodded grimly. They were holding their own, but for how long? He turned his attention back to the tactical display, searching for any sign of a new Ferengi thrust. Suddenly an alarm blared. Wells's eyes snapped to a cluster of red dots breaking away from the main Ferengi fleet. They were on a direct course for the moon. "Patch me through to Admiral Cook," Wells ordered, his voice tight with urgency. Aboard the captured flagship, Cook received Wells's transmission with growing concern. He watched as the rogue Ferengi ships, led by a vessel he now knew belonged to Talon's second-in-command, Zork, made a beeline for the Lunar Defense System. "They're going to try to take out our biggest advantage," Cook realized aloud. He turned to his team, his expression resolute. "We can't let that happen. Plot an intercept course, maximum speed." As the flagship lurched into pursuit, Cook couldn't help but feel a grim sense of irony. Here he was, chasing down alien ships in their own vessel, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. Back in the Sahara complex, Dr. Takahashi's team had made a breakthrough. "It's not an exact match," one of her colleagues explained, pointing to a complex genetic diagram on his screen. "But there's a similarity in a specific blood type. It's rare, found in less than 1% of the human population." Takahashi's mind raced with the implications. "We need to find someone with this blood type and fast. Start a global search, hospitals, blood banks, genetic databases. We need a compatible donor to fully unlock these weapons." As the search began, the complex's systems hummed with growing power. Takahashi could almost feel the weight of millennia pressing down on her. Whatever the precursors had left behind, it was clear they had intended for humanity to find it. Now, it was up to them to prove worthy of this inheritance. The global search for a compatible donor quickly narrowed down to a handful of potential candidates. One name rose to the top of the list: Alex Reeves, a young man living in Australia. As Earth's forces mobilized to locate and extract Alex, Colonel Wells received alarming intelligence. A Ferengi landing party had been detected in the Amazon rainforest, attempting to establish a ground presence. Wells knew he couldn't let that happen. He assembled an elite team of soldiers, each one hardened by weeks of brutal combat against the alien invaders. As they boarded their transport, Wells addressed his troops. "This is it, people. We stop them here or we lose everything. Are you with me?" The response was a chorus of determined affirmations. As their transport lifted off, heading towards the dense jungle canopy of the Amazon, Wells allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. In the space above Earth's moon, Admiral Cook's stolen flagship closed in on Zork's rogue fleet. The void between them was filled with debris from the ongoing battle, creating a treacherous obstacle course. "Evasive maneuvers," Cook shouted as a piece of Ferengi hull the size of a bus hurtled towards them. The ship banked hard, narrowly avoiding the debris. Zork's ships scattered as they approached, clearly not expecting to be pursued by their own flagship. Cook saw an opportunity and seized it. "Target the lead ship's engines," he ordered Major Lee. "Let's see how well Zork fights with a limp." As the battle near the moon intensified, the race to secure Alex Reeves in Australia reached a critical point. A team of Special Forces operatives had located the young man, but they weren't the only ones closing in. Ferengi scouts, likely alerted to the importance of the human's genetic markers, were converging on his location. In the skies above Sydney, a high-stakes chase was unfolding. The human extraction team, with Alex secured in their transport, weaved through the city's towering skyscrapers, desperately trying to shake off their Ferengi pursuers. As the transport banked around the Opera House, its pilot keyed the radio. "This is Dingo 1. We have the package, but we're taking heavy fire. Request immediate assistance." The response came not from Earth, but from orbit. Admiral Cook's voice crackled over the comm. "Hang tight, Dingo 1. Help is on the way." Moments later, precision strikes from the captured Ferengi flagship rained down on the alien pursuit craft. The Sydney skyline lit up with explosions as the Ferengi scouts were picked off one by one. With the immediate threat neutralized, Dingo 1 set course for the Sahara complex. As they flew, Alex Reeves sat in stunned silence, trying to process how he had gone from an ordinary life to being the potential key to humanity's survival in a matter of hours. As these events unfolded across Earth and in near orbit, the Ferengi fleet continued to fragment. Some ships pressed their attack with increased desperation, while others attempted to flee the system entirely. Humanity's forces, bolstered by the precursor weapons and their captured flagship, fought with renewed vigor. The next few hours would determine the fate of Earth and its place in the galaxy. As Admiral Cook prepared for another assault on Zork's forces, as Colonel Wells and his team delved deep into the Amazon to root out the Ferengi landing party, and as Dr. Takahashi anxiously awaited Alex's arrival in the Sahara, one thing was clear. This conflict was just the beginning, and its resolution would forever change the course of human history. The chaos of battle spread across Earth and space as humanity fought for its very survival. In Australia, Colonel Marcus Wells led a joint military-civilian task force on a critical mission to retrieve Alex Reeves, the young man whose rare genetic makeup could be the key to unlocking the ancient precursor defenses. Wells's team raced across the sun-baked landscape of the Australian outback, their vehicles kicking up clouds of red dust. Suddenly, their sensors lit up with an alert. "Sir, we've got company," Lieutenant Navarro called out from the lead vehicle, Ferengi scout ship coming in fast from the northwest. Wells's teeth gritted. They must have detected the genetic signature. Evasive maneuvers now. The convoy scattered, each vehicle taking a different route across the rugged terrain. Wells's driver, Private Chen, expertly navigated around massive boulders and across dry riverbeds. "Sir, I've got eyes on the target," Chen reported, gesturing towards a small homestead in the distance. As they approached, the Ferengi scout ship screamed overhead, its energy weapons scorching the earth around them. Wells leaped from the vehicle before it had fully stopped, sprinting towards the house with his team close behind. A young man appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "What's going on?" he shouted over the din of battle. "Alex Reeves?" Wells called out. At the man's nod, he continued, "I'm Colonel Wells. We need to get you out of here now. The fate of humanity depends on it." Alex hesitated for just a moment before grabbing a backpack and rushing to join them. As they ran back to the vehicles, Ferengi troops began to materialize around them, their personal cloaking devices shimmering as they deactivated. "Contact!" Sergeant Miyazaki yelled, opening fire with her pulse rifle. The air filled with the sizzle of energy weapons and the staccato of gunfire. To everyone's surprise, Alex displayed remarkable agility and awareness, ducking and weaving through the chaos with uncanny precision. He even managed to tackle Wells to the ground, saving him from a Ferengi energy blast. "How did you—" Wells began, but there was no time for questions. They scrambled into the vehicles and sped away, the Ferengi in hot pursuit. As the chase unfolded across the outback, Admiral Cook found himself in an equally desperate situation near the moon. Zork's rogue Ferengi fleet pressed their attack, determined to destroy the lunar defense system that had proven so effective against their forces. Cook's stolen flagship danced through a debris field, narrowly avoiding collisions as he formulated a plan. His eyes locked onto a massive chunk of a destroyed Ferengi cruiser tumbling nearby. "Major Lee," he called out, "can we use the tractor beam to grab that debris?" Lee's fingers flew over the controls. "Affirmative, Admiral. What do you have in mind?" "We're going to play a little game of cosmic billiards," Cook replied, a grim smile on his face. "Use the moon's gravity to slingshot that debris right into Zork's fleet." The plan worked better than anyone could have hoped. The massive chunk of wreckage, accelerated by the moon's gravitational pull, smashed through the rogue Ferengi fleet like a bowling ball through pins. Ships exploded or spun out of control, their formation shattered. "Direct hit," Dr. Rodriguez exclaimed, her eyes wide as she monitored the sensor readings. "Admiral, the enemy fleet is in disarray." Cook nodded, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction before refocusing on the battle at hand. "Press the advantage, target their flagship and—" His orders were cut short by a violent tremor that shook the entire ship. Alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. "We've been boarded," Major Lee shouted, her hands flying over the weapons controls. "Ferengi commandos, multiple entry points." Cook grabbed a nearby pulse rifle, his expression hardening. "Looks like we'll have to defend this ship the old-fashioned way. Everyone, arm yourselves. We can't let them retake control." As Cook and his crew engaged in desperate close-quarters combat throughout the flagship, the situation on Earth grew increasingly dire. In the Amazon rainforest, what had initially seemed like a small Ferengi landing party revealed itself to be a much larger invasion force. Colonel Juarez of the Brazilian Armed Forces surveyed the alien encampment from a concealed position, his face grim as he relayed information to his superiors. "The Ferengi are constructing some kind of fortified base," he reported via encrypted comm channel. "They're using advanced cloaking technology. If we hadn't stumbled upon it by accident, we might never have known it was here." The dense canopy of the rainforest came alive with the hum of alien machinery and the movement of Ferengi troops. Juarez and his team watched in growing alarm as more dropships descended, disgorging soldiers and equipment. "We need reinforcements," Juarez urged. "If they establish a foothold here, we'll have a full-scale ground invasion on our hands." But reinforcements were scarce. All across the globe, Earth's military forces were stretched to their limits. Major cities came under direct Ferengi attack as more ships broke through the weakening orbital defenses. In New York, the experimental energy shields shimmered and buckled under the onslaught of Ferengi weapons. Citizens huddled in makeshift shelters as the battle raged overhead, the skyline marred by pillars of smoke and the flash of explosions. Similar scenes played out in London, Tokyo, Moscow, and dozens of other urban centers. The chaos spread, governments struggled to maintain order, and the coordination of Earth's defense efforts became increasingly difficult. Amidst this global turmoil, Dr. Elena Takahashi and her team in the Sahara complex made a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. As they delved deeper into the precursor technology, they uncovered a startling truth. "This isn't just a weapon system," Takahashi breathed, her eyes wide as she studied the holographic display before her. "It's a network, a global network of defense systems and something more." Her colleague, Dr. Mbeki, leaned in to examine the data. "These readings, Elena, I think this is a terraforming system. And look at these algorithms. It's some kind of advanced climate control network." The implications hit Takahashi like a physical blow. If we activate this at full power, it could repel the Ferengi invasion, but the environmental impact could be catastrophic. As the scientists grappled with this moral dilemma, Colonel Wells's team finally approached the Sahara complex with Alex Reeves in tow. But their arrival coincided with a massive Ferengi assault on the facility. The sky above the complex filled with Ferengi dropships and attack craft. Energy weapons strafed the desert sands, turning the silica to glass in their wake. Earth's defensive forces, a mix of military units from various nations, scrambled to repel the attack. Wells's convoy skidded to a halt at the complex's entrance, immediately coming under fire. "Get Alex inside," he shouted, returning fire with his pulse rifle. "We'll hold them off." As Alex was rushed into the facility, Wells and his team joined the defensive perimeter. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burning metal as human and alien weapons clashed. Inside the complex, Dr. Takahashi met Alex with a mix of hope and trepidation. "We need you to interface with the precursor technology," she explained quickly, leading him to a central chamber dominated by an alien control console. "But you need to understand the risks. This system, it's more powerful and more dangerous than we imagined." Alex nodded, his face set with willpower as he approached the console. As he placed his hands on the alien interface, the entire complex hummed to life, energy coursing through long-dormant systems. Outside, the battle raged on. Colonel Wells and his forces fought desperately to keep the Ferengi at bay, knowing that everything hinged on what happened within the complex. The fate of humanity hung in the balance as Alex Reeves, an ordinary young man thrust into an extraordinary situation, prepared to unleash the full power of the precursor technology. The world held its breath, teetering on the edge of either salvation or destruction. Destruction or salvation as Alex's hands made contact with the alien console. A surge of energy coursed through Alex's body, his eyes widening as information flooded his mind. The complex hummed louder, the vibrations intensifying until they resonated through the very bedrock beneath their feet. Dr. Takahashi watched in awe as holographic displays erupted around them, filling the air with swirling patterns of light and data. "It's working," she breathed, her fingers flying over her tablet as she attempted to make sense of the incoming information. Outside, Colonel Wells ducked behind a makeshift barricade, the sizzle of Ferengi energy weapons filling the air. He risked a glance over the top, witnessing the relentless advance of the alien forces. "We can't hold them much longer," he shouted into his comm unit. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Wells watched in disbelief as massive structures erupted from the desert sand, ancient machinery awakening from millennia of slumber. Similar scenes played out across the globe as hidden installations revealed themselves, their purpose now clear. In the Amazon rainforest, Colonel Juarez and his team were forced to take cover as the earth shook violently. Through gaps in the dense canopy, they saw enormous energy beams shooting skyward from previously concealed precursor sites. These beams converged high above the planet, forming a shimmering protective shield that enveloped the Earth. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Ferengi ships caught within the shield's radius sparked and faltered, their systems overloaded by the massive energy surge. Those outside the perimeter found themselves unable to penetrate the barrier, their weapons dissipating harmlessly against its surface. In orbit, Admiral Cook watched from the bridge of the captured Ferengi flagship as the planetary shield materialized. "My God," he murmured, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and concern. "What have we unleashed?" His moment of reflection was cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. "Admiral," Major Lee called out, her voice tense. "The shield's energy output is interfering with our systems. We're losing power and communications." Cook's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The Ferengi fleet was in disarray, but Earth's defenses were now compromised in an entirely new way. He made a split-second decision. "Break off pursuit of Zork's faction," he ordered. "Set course for low Earth orbit. We need to establish a communication link with the ground forces." As the flagship descended, the full extent of the shield's side effects became apparent. Major cities across the planet were plunged into darkness as power grids failed. Global communication networks sputtered and died, leaving military and civilian leaders scrambling to coordinate their efforts. In New York, the experimental energy shields protecting the city flickered and failed. Citizens who had moments ago been cheering the retreat of the Ferengi ships now found themselves facing a new kind of chaos. Emergency services struggled to respond to calls for help as traffic lights went dark and hospital backup generators strained under the load. Back in the Sahara complex, Alex Reeves staggered away from the console, his palms sweating from the influx of information. "Dr. Takahashi," he gasped, "the system, it's more than just a weapon. It's alive somehow, and it's trying to communicate with me." Takahashi's expression shifted from excitement to concern as she studied the readings on her tablet. "Alex, the energy output from the shield is causing rapid climate changes across the globe. If we keep it active for too long, the environmental damage could be catastrophic." Their conversation was interrupted by Colonel Wells bursting into the room, his uniform scorched and torn. "The Ferengi forces are retreating," he reported, "but we've lost all communication with our command structure. We're flying blind out there." As Earth's defenders grappled with this new reality, the Ferengi were facing their own challenges. Zork, his fleet now regrouped at a safe distance from the planetary shield, paced the bridge of his command ship. "Find me a weakness in that barrier," he snarled at his subordinates. "Focus your scans on the polar regions and along major fault lines." On the ground, the Ferengi invaders found themselves cut off from orbital support. In the Amazon, their efforts to establish a permanent base intensified. Powerful energy weapons carved through the ancient trees, creating a rapidly expanding clearing that threatened both the delicate ecosystem and the indigenous populations nearby. Colonel Juarez, witnessing the destruction from his hidden vantage point, knew they couldn't wait for reinforcements that might never come. He gathered his team and the local resistance fighters, outlining a plan for guerrilla warfare against the technologically superior invaders. "We know this land better than they ever will," Juarez told his makeshift army. "We'll use that knowledge to our advantage. Hit them hard, then disappear into the jungle before they can retaliate." As this impromptu resistance took shape in the Amazon, a new threat was emerging in the Australian outback. The Ferengi scout ship that had been pursuing Alex Reeves lay half buried in the red soil, its hull cracked and smoking from its abrupt landing. Commander Grek, the ship's cunning leader, emerged from the wreckage. His beady eyes scanned the horizon as he activated a portable scanner. "Spread out," he ordered his crew. "Gather all the intelligence you can on these new Earth defenses. If we can transmit this data back to the fleet, we may yet turn this defeat into victory." Around the world, civilians and military personnel alike struggled to adapt to the rapidly changing situation. In London, a group of university students used their engineering knowledge to rig up a makeshift radio transmitter, providing a vital communication link for their neighborhood. In Tokyo, office workers formed human chains to deliver supplies to hospitals operating on emergency power. Admiral Cook, now in low Earth orbit, worked feverishly with his crew to establish a new communication network, using the advanced technology of the Ferengi flagship. "If we can link up with the ground forces," he explained to Major Lee, "we can coordinate a global counteroffensive." As these efforts unfolded, Alex Reeves found himself grappling with an entirely different challenge. The precursor defense system, now fully awakened, was bombarding him with a series of cryptic messages and vivid visions. It's like it's testing us, Alex explained to Dr. Takahashi, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and apprehension. I think the precursors left this technology behind as some kind of trial. They want to know if we're ready for something bigger. Takahashi's brow furrowed as she considered the implications. Ready for what? She asked, but before Alex could respond, another tremor shook the complex. Outside, the shimmering planetary shield rippled and fluctuated. Earth's leaders, now facing a terrible choice, debated their next move. Should they risk long-term damage to the planet by maintaining the shield, or lower their defenses and confront the Ferengi threat directly? As discussions raged and battles continued on multiple fronts, one thing became clear. The conflict that had begun as a simple invasion had evolved into something far more complex. The fate of humanity now rested not just on their ability to repel the Ferengi, but on their capacity to understand and control the ancient power they had awakened. The precursor technology pulsed with energy, its true purpose still shrouded in mystery. And in orbit, Zork's fleet probed relentlessly for weaknesses, determined to claim their prize. The battle for Earth had entered a new phase, with challenges and revelations yet to come. Alex Reeves staggered back from the alien console, his pupils dilating from the flood of information. Dr. Takahashi, he gasped, I think I understand now. This technology, it's not just a weapon or a shield, it's designed to work with us, to enhance us. Takahashi's eyes widened as she processed this revelation. You mean it's integrating with your biology? Alex nodded, flexing his fingers as if seeing them for the first time. I can feel it. It's unlocking something inside me, some hidden potential. The scientist's mind raced with possibilities. If we could replicate this on a larger scale... She turned to Colonel Wells, who stood nearby, still tense from the battle outside. Colonel, we need volunteers, people with genetic markers similar to Alex's. Wells nodded grimly. I'll put out the call, but what exactly are we asking these people to do? On to become our best hope for survival, Takahashi replied, her voice firm with dedication. As they set their plan in motion, high above the Earth, Admiral Cook stood on the bridge of the captured Ferengi flagship, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of energy that marked the alien fleet's movements. There, he muttered, pointing to a recurring formation in the holographic display. Major Lee, do you see it? The Major leaned in, her brow furrowed in concentration. A pattern in their energy signatures? Cook nodded. Exactly, if we can predict their movements. He trailed off, his mind already formulating a strategy. Lee's fingers flew over the alien controls, inputting commands with growing confidence. Sir, I think I can use this to calculate their next maneuvers. A grim smile spread across Cook's face. Then it's time we took the fight to them. Prepare all available ships for coordinated strikes. As Earth's orbital defenses rallied thousands of miles below in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, Colonel Juarez and his makeshift army crept through the dense undergrowth. The Ferengi base loomed before them, a hideous scar of metal and energy fields amid the lush green canopy. Juarez raised a hand, signaling his team to halt. He peered through a gap in the foliage, his eyes narrowing as he took in the alien structure. There, he whispered, pointing to a massive cylindrical device being assembled in the center of the clearing. That must be the weapon they're building. A local fighter, her face streaked with mud for camouflage, leaned in close. How do we stop it? She asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of alien machinery. Juarez's lips curled into a fierce grin. We hit them where it hurts. Sabotage their power systems, destroy their supplies. We'll make this jungle their graveyard. With silent efficiency, the team dispersed, melting into the shadows of the rainforest. The battle for Earth's future was about to be fought in the heart of nature's most formidable fortress. Meanwhile, in the sun-baked expanse of the Australian outback, Commander Grech stumbled from his makeshift shelter, his limbs heavy and uncoordinated. He squinted against the harsh sunlight, his Ferengi eyes struggling to adjust. "What's happening to us?" he growled, turning to his crew. They looked back at him with a mixture of fear and confusion, their bodies visibly altered by their time on Earth. One of his officers, Nork, held up a scanner, its display flickering erratically. "Commander, our bodies are changing, adapting to this planet's conditions." Grek snarled, snatching the device from Nork's hands. "Impossible! We are Ferengi. We do not adapt. We conquer." But even as he spoke, Grek could feel the changes within himself. His muscles felt denser, his lungs more efficient. It was as if his body was betraying him, embracing this alien world. Unbeknownst to the stranded Ferengi, their physiological changes had not gone unnoticed. In a hastily assembled research facility on the outskirts of Sydney, Dr. Emily Chen pored over satellite data and long-range scans. "This is incredible," she murmured, turning to her colleague. "The Ferengi biology is reacting to Earth's environment in ways we never anticipated. If we can understand this process—" Her colleague nodded, excitement building in his voice. "We might be able to use it against them, a biological countermeasure." As scientists raced to unravel the mysteries of Ferengi biology, the planet itself seemed to rebel against the invasion. Storm clouds gathered over cities worldwide, unleashing torrential rains and howling winds. Coastal areas battled rising tides, while inland regions withered under intense heat. In the United Nations Emergency Command Center, hastily relocated to a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, world leaders grappled with the dual crises of alien invasion and global climate catastrophe. "We need to divert resources to disaster relief," argued the Chinese representative, her voice tense. "If we don't, we may not have a planet left to defend." The American president shook his head, frustration evident in every line of his face. "And leave ourselves open to Ferengi attack. We can't afford to weaken our military response." As the debate raged on, a new alert flashed across the command center's main screen. All eyes turned to the display, watching in horror as Ferengi ships began targeting Earth's moon. Admiral Cook's voice crackled over the emergency channel. "They're trying to destabilize the moon's orbit. If they succeed, the tidal effects on Earth will be catastrophic." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the Secretary General spoke, her voice heavy with the weight of command. "Admiral Cook, you have new orders. Defend the moon at all costs." Back in the Sahara complex, Alex Reeves stood at the center of a circle of volunteers, each connected to the precursor technology through a web of pulsing energy. Dr. Takahashi monitored their vital signs, her face a mask of concentration. "Focus," Alex instructed, his voice strained with effort. "Feel the energy flowing through you, connecting you to the shield." Slowly, the chaotic fluctuations in the planetary defense system began to stabilize. The volunteers gasped and shuddered, their bodies glowing with an inner light as they channeled the alien power. Dr. Takahashi checked her readings, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. "It's working," she breathed. "They're actually repairing some of the environmental damage." But even as she spoke, one of the volunteers collapsed, blood trickling from his nose. Others swayed on their feet, their faces pale and drawn. "We can't keep this up indefinitely," Alex warned, his own voice ragged with exhaustion. "The strain is too much." As Earth's defenders pushed themselves to their limits, the Ferengi leadership watched from their command ships, frustration turning to desperation. Zork paced the bridge of his flagship, his sharp teeth bared in a snarl. "If we cannot break their shield, we will overwhelm it. Prepare the swarm ships." Across the Ferengi fleet, hundreds of smaller, sleeker vessels roared to life. They streaked towards Earth, their formation shifting and splitting, probing for any weakness in the planet's defenses. Admiral Cook's voice boomed through the makeshift communication network, rallying Earth's scattered forces. "All units, be advised, we have multiple incoming bogies. Prepare for ground assault." As the swarm ships descended, battles erupted across the globe. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, Russian tanks faced off against Ferengi walkers. High in the Andes, Incan descendants used their knowledge of the terrain to ambush alien landing parties. On the beaches of Bali, tourists turned fighters wielded makeshift weapons against Ferengi shock troops. In the Sahara complex, Dr. Takahashi's tablet chimed with an incoming message. Her eyes widened as she read the data scrolling across the screen. "Alex," she called out, her voice urgent. "The precursor technology. It contains information about other alien civilizations, potential allies." Alex turned to her, hope and trepidation warring in his eyes. "Can we contact them?" Takahashi's expression grew grim. "Yes, but it would require diverting power from the planetary shield. We'd be vulnerable, even if only for a short time." As they contemplated this perilous choice, the sounds of battle echoed from beyond the complex walls. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, with the next decision poised to tip the scales of this interstellar war. The tension in the Sahara complex was palpable as world leaders convened via holographic link. Dr. Takahashi's revelation about potential alien allies hung in the air, a tantalizing hope tinged with danger. "Why, we must take this chance," the Indian Prime Minister urged, her hologram flickering slightly. "Our defenses are stretched thin as it is." The American president shook his head. "The risk is too great. If we lower our shields even for a moment—" "We may not have a choice," interrupted the Chinese representative. "This war cannot be won through attrition alone." As the debate raged on, Alex Reeves stepped forward, his eyes glowing faintly with the energy of the precursor technology. "I believe we can do this," he said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on his face. "But we'll need to coordinate our efforts precisely." After what felt like an eternity, a consensus was reached. Earth would attempt contact. Dr. Takahashi's fingers flew over her console as she initiated the power transfer sequence. "Diverting energy from the planetary shield now," she announced, her voice tense. "Alex, are you ready?" Alex nodded, taking his place at the center of the circle of enhanced human operators. As one, they closed their eyes, channeling the alien energy through their bodies and into the ancient communication array. The complex hummed with power, the air crackling with electricity. Outside, the shimmering planetary shield flickered and dimmed. In orbit, Admiral Cook watched with growing alarm as his sensors registered the weakening defenses. "All ships, form up," he barked into the comms. "Defensive perimeter around the planet now." Earth's remaining orbital platforms and the captured Ferengi flagship moved into position, creating a second line of defense. It was a daring plan, but it was all they had. Zork, watching from his command ship, bared his pointed teeth in a triumphant grin. "The humans have made a fatal error," he hissed. "All ships commence the assault, crush their defenses, and claim this world for the Ferengi Alliance." The void of space erupted with weapons fire as the Ferengi Armada surged forward. Earth's makeshift defense line held firm, but for how long? On the surface, the situation rapidly deteriorated. Ferengi shock troops poured through gaps in the weakened planetary shield, establishing beachheads across the globe. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, Russian T-90 tanks faced off against towering Ferengi walkers. The tanks weaved between snow-covered pines, using the terrain to their advantage as they fired volley after volley at the alien war machines. High in the Andes, a joint South American task force led by veteran guerrilla fighters ambushed Ferengi landing parties. They used their intimate knowledge of the mountain passes to lure the aliens into deadly choke points, then unleashed avalanches and precision strikes. Colonel Wells, fresh from securing the Amazon, found himself redeployed to Indonesia. He stood on the deck of an amphibious assault ship, watching as his multinational force approached the shores of Sumatra. "Remember, people," he addressed his troops, "we hit hard and fast. These islands are the key to pushing back the Ferengi advance in the Pacific. Failure is not an option." As the first wave of human forces stormed the beaches, they were met with fierce resistance. Ferengi energy weapons lit up the night sky, while human artillery pounded alien positions. The battle for Indonesia had begun. Meanwhile, in the sun-baked expanse of the Australian outback, Commander Grech stared at his reflection in a murky pool of water. His once familiar Ferengi features had subtly altered, becoming more suited to Earth's environment. He flexed his arms, marveling at the increased strength and endurance he now possessed. "Commander," one of his officers approached, looking equally changed. "What are we to do? We can no longer return to the fleet. Our own people would view us as abominations." Grech's mind raced, weighing his options. Finally, he came to a decision. "Contact the human military forces," he ordered. Tell them we wish to defect. We have information they'll find valuable." Back in the Sahara complex, Dr. Takahashi and her team worked feverishly to establish contact through the precursor array. Suddenly, a burst of alien symbols flashed across their screens. "We've done it," Takahashi exclaimed. "We're receiving a response." The symbols coalesced into a holographic image of a being unlike anything they had ever seen. It introduced itself as an emissary of the Arcturians, a highly advanced civilization with a long-standing rivalry against the Ferengi. As Alex and the other enhanced humans struggled to maintain the connection, Dr. Takahashi pleaded Earth's case. The Arcturian listened impassively, then spoke. "Your species shows promise, but we require proof of your worthiness. Demonstrate your mastery of the precursor technology, and we may consider lending our aid." Alex, sweat beading on his brow, turned to his fellow operators. "We need to show them what we can do," he said, his voice strained. "Everyone, focus your energy on the planetary shield. We're going to create a pulse they won't soon forget." The enhanced humans channeled every ounce of their strength into the alien technology. The air around them shimmered and distorted as raw power built to a crescendo. Outside, the weakened planetary shield suddenly flared to life with blinding intensity. A massive energy pulse exploded outward, rippling across the solar system. Ferengi ships tumbled in the wake of the shockwave, their systems temporarily overloaded. The Arcturian emissary's eyes widened in what might have been surprise. "Impressive," it intoned. "We will send a support fleet to your aid. But be warned, our forces will require time to reach your world. You must hold out until then." As the communication ended and the planetary shield returned to its normal state, albeit significantly weakened, Admiral Cook knew they were living on borrowed time. "We can't wait for the Arcturians," he muttered, studying the tactical display on his bridge. A plan began to form in his mind, audacious, perhaps suicidal, but potentially decisive. "Major Lee," he called out, "how confident are you in your ability to navigate this Ferengi vessel?" Lee's eyes gleamed with commitment. "Give me a target, sir, and I'll get us there." Cook nodded grimly. "Then prepare for a stealth mission. We're going to infiltrate the heart of the Ferengi fleet and take out their command and control systems." As preparations for this high-risk operation began, a new alert blared through the command channels. Zork, enraged by the looming threat of Arcturian intervention, had played his final card. "Sir!" a sensor operator cried out. "We're detecting a massive energy buildup on the lunar surface. It's some kind of super weapon." Cook's blood ran cold as he realized the true purpose of Zork's earlier attacks on the moon. "A planet cracker missile," he breathed. "They're going to shatter the Earth's crust." The stakes had never been higher. Earth's forces now faced a multi-pronged challenge: defend against the ongoing invasion, neutralize the lunar threat, and somehow disable the Ferengi fleet's command structure. As Admiral Cook finalized his infiltration plan and Colonel Wells fought to secure the Indonesian archipelago, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Arcturians were coming, but would they arrive in time? Admiral Cook's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the tactical display. The situation was dire, but a plan was taking shape in his mind. He turned to Major Lee, tenacity etched on his face. "Major, we're going in. Prepare a strike team for immediate deployment." Lee nodded sharply. "Yes, sir. What's the target?" "The heart of the Ferengi fleet," Cook replied, his voice low and intense. "We're going to hit their command and control systems directly." As Cook outlined his daring plan, the captured Ferengi flagship hummed with activity. Elite soldiers from various Earth nations checked their gear, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the stakes. Failure meant the end of everything they held dear. Meanwhile, on the surface of a war-torn Indonesian island, Colonel Wells crouched behind the smoldering wreckage of a Ferengi walker. His multinational task force had been pushing hard against the alien invaders, but something felt off about their defensive patterns. "Sir," a young lieutenant called out, ducking low as energy bolts sizzled overhead. "We've detected an unusual concentration of Ferengi transmissions coming from that ridge." He pointed to a heavily forested hill in the distance. Wells's eyes narrowed. "That's not a standard comm relay, it's too well defended." He watched as another wave of Ferengi troops emerged from the tree line, their weapons blazing. Whatever's in there, they're protecting it with everything they've got. Making a split-second decision, Wells keyed his comm unit. "All units, this is Colonel Wells. We've located a priority target. I want all available forces to converge on these coordinates. We're taking that hill." As Wells rallied his troops for the assault, Admiral Cook's infiltration team was making its approach. The captured Ferengi flagship slipped silently through the void, its stealth systems masking their presence from the surrounding armada. Cook stood on the bridge, his heart pounding as they neared their target, the massive command vessel at the center of the Ferengi fleet. "Major Lee, status report," he ordered quietly. Lee's fingers danced across the alien controls. "We're within range, sir. Their security protocols are adapting quickly, but I'm staying one step ahead, for now." Cook nodded. "Take us in, nice and easy." The flagship glided into a docking position, latching onto the command vessel with barely a tremor. Cook turned to his strike team. "Remember your training. We move fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until we reach the central computer core. Let's move." The airlock hissed open, and Earth's finest soldiers poured into the Ferengi ship. They moved with practiced precision, their weapons at the ready. For several tense minutes, they encountered no resistance. Then, as they rounded a corner near the ship's core, all hell broke loose. A squad of Ferengi warriors, clad in gleaming battle armor, opened fire from entrenched positions. Energy bolts filled the air, forcing Cook's team to dive for cover. "Return fire!" Cook shouted, squeezing off several shots from his captured Ferengi weapon. The close quarters turned the battle into a chaotic melee. Human soldiers grappled with Ferengi warriors, the aliens' technological advantage negated by the humans' superior hand-to-hand combat skills. Cook found himself face-to-face with a snarling Ferengi commander. The alien's energy blade crackled as it swung towards Cook's head. The admiral ducked, feeling the heat of the weapon as it passed inches from his scalp. In one fluid motion, Cook stepped inside the Ferengi's guard and delivered a crushing elbow strike to its throat. As the battle raged in the corridors of the Ferengi command ship, Colonel Wells and his forces were making their push up the forested hill. The sound of weapons fire and explosions filled the air as they fought their way through layer after layer of Ferengi defenses. Wells, his uniform torn and smeared with mud, pressed forward relentlessly. "Keep moving," he shouted to his troops. "Whatever they're hiding up there, we need to take it out." Finally, they crested the ridge. Before them stood a massive communication array, jam-packed with alien technology. Wells's eyes widened as he saw the displays flickering with data, coordinates for the lunar surface, power readings, launch trajectories. "My God," he breathed, "it's the control center for their Planet Cracker missile." A Ferengi technician spun towards them, reaching for a prominent red button on the main console. Wells reacted instantly, diving across the room. His hand closed around the alien's wrist mere inches from the launch control. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Wells stared into the Ferengi's eyes, seeing fear and desperation there. Then, with a surge of strength, he wrenched the alien's arm away and slammed his other fist into its face. The Ferengi crumpled, and Wells turned his attention to the console. Alien symbols flashed across the screen, a countdown ticking away the seconds until global annihilation. With no time to decipher the controls, Wells did the only thing he could. He emptied his weapon into the machinery, shorting out the entire system in a shower of sparks. As silence fell over the ruined command center, Wells sagged against the console, breathing heavily. They'd stopped the missile launch, but the battle was nowhere near the end. Back on the Ferengi command ship, Admiral Cook and his team fought their way to the central computer core. They found themselves in a vast chamber dominated by pulsing crystalline structures. Before Cook could issue orders, a familiar voice rang out. "So the primitives have some fight in them after all." Zork, the Ferengi fleet commander, stepped into view. He held an ornate energy weapon, its barrel trained squarely on Cook's chest. "I must admit I underestimated your species," Zork continued, his sharp teeth bared in a mirthless grin. "But this is where your feudal resistance ends." Cook's mind raced, assessing the situation. His team was scattered, still engaged with Zork's guards. He was alone, facing a technologically superior opponent. But Cook had one advantage: years of hard-won combat experience. In one fluid motion, Cook hurled himself to the side. Zork's shot went wide, searing a hole in the deck plating. Before the Ferengi could adjust his aim, Cook closed the distance between them. The two leaders grappled, their fight a blur of strikes and counters. Zork's advanced armor gave him an edge in strength, but Cook's training allowed him to use the Ferengi's momentum against him. They crashed into consoles and crystal structures, neither willing to give ground. Finally, Cook saw an opening. As Zork lunged forward, the Admiral sidestepped and delivered a devastating strike to the base of the Ferengi's skull. Zork stumbled, his armor sparking and malfunctioning. Cook pressed his advantage, raining blows on his opponent until Zork collapsed, unconscious. Breathing heavily, Cook staggered to the central computer interface. He interfaced his captured Ferengi tech with the system, gaining control of the entire fleet's communication network. "Attention, all Ferengi vessels," he broadcast, his voice echoing across every ship in the Armada. "Your leader has fallen, Earth's defenses are holding, and our allies are on their way. This is your final warning. Leave our solar system now or face total destruction." As Cook's ultimatum rang out across space, the tide of battle began to turn. On Earth, the enhanced human operators led by Alex Reeves made a critical breakthrough. The precursor technology responded to their combined will, allowing them to project a massive holographic display visible from orbit. Images of Earth's military might and the approaching Arcturian fleet filled the sky, sowing confusion and fear among the Ferengi forces. The bluff, combined with Admiral Cook's broadcast, began to erode the aliens' drive. Suddenly, space lit up with new energy signatures. The first wave of Arcturian ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their sleek, advanced vessels immediately engaging the disorganized Ferengi fleet. Aboard the captured command ship, Admiral Cook watched in awe as the Arcturians turned the tide of battle. Their weapons cut through Ferengi shields like they were tissue paper, while their own defenses shrugged off retaliatory fire with ease. Faced with this overwhelming force, the majority of the Ferengi fleet began to retreat. Ship after ship activated their FTL drives, fleeing the solar system in a panic. As the last Ferengi vessels disappeared from sensors, a cheer went up from Earth's defenders. The invasion had been repelled, but the work of rebuilding and preparing for the future was just beginning. Admiral Cook keyed his comm unit, connecting with the Planetary Defense Network. "This is Admiral Cook to all Earth forces. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but stay alert. We have a lot of work ahead of us." He turned to look out at the planet below, a mix of emotions playing across his face. They had won the day, but at a tremendous cost. As the Arcturian ships moved into orbit alongside Earth's battered fleet, Cook knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.